The morning air was sharp with the first bite of autumn. Frost clung to the brittle grass, and the trees swayed with a restless wind that carried the smell of wood smoke from chimneys. A dull sun pressed weakly through the clouds, painting the streets in pale gray. Down the narrow lane, the familiar rumble of the yellow school bus broke the silence. Its brakes squealed as it slowed, the headlights cutting through the mist. Behind the wheel was Raymond Hale, a man of 48 with thinning hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. He had been driving this route for years, a fixture in the town's quiet mornings. His face carried the weariness of a man who lived alone to long, yet he smiled faintly as the first of the children stepped aboard. Emma Monroe was the first. 9 years old, pale brown hair falling into her eyes. She hugged her sketchbook tightly to her chest. She hardly spoke when she climbed the steps, offering only a timid glance toward Hale before she slipped into her usual seat near the window. Emma lived in her drawings, pages filled with sprawling forests, animals, a world she wished were real. Hale often glanced at her in the mirror, wondering what went on in that quiet mind, but she never said much beyond a soft good morning. Not long after, Sarah Davis bounded onto the bus with an energy that made her blonde curls bounce. Only 8 years old, but her voice carried louder than the others, full of confidence and cheer. She called out Morning, Ray, as though she had known him all her life, then dragged her backpack down the aisle, turning to chatter with Emma. Even when Emma only nodded shyly in reply, Sarah liked to play leader, always coaxing the others into games, always deciding who sat where. She had a way of making herself heard, even when adults tried to hush her. The third girl was Lily Hart. She stepped on the bus with a grace unusual for a child. Her dark eyes flickered around the seats as if measuring the space before choosing one. She was 9, same as Emma, but carried herself older, more aware. Bright-eyed yet strangely distant, she was new to the town. Nobody seemed to know where she came from, and when parents asked, the answers were vague. Her mother had said they moved for work. Lily smiled politely at Hale, her gaze lingering a second too long, before sitting near the back. She was a puzzle no one had solved. Abigail Stone followed, her small hands clutching a lunch tin decorated with painted flowers. She was 7, a soft-spoken child with honey-colored hair and a love for music. She hummed as she walked, barely audible, but enough for those close to notice. Her family was wealthy, her father stern and busy, her mother distant. Abigail often looked like she longed for something warmer than the cold stone house she lived in. She slid quietly into a seat near Sarah, her voice soon drowned out by Sarah's chatter. Last came little Ruthie Collins, the youngest at 6. Her brown pigtails bobbed as she climbed aboard, her rag doll clutched tightly in one hand. The doll's fabric was fraying, its button eyes mismatched, but Ruthie held it like a treasure. She smiled shyly at Hale before hurrying to join the other girls. Ruthie rarely spoke to anyone outside her small circle, but the doll was her constant companion, as though it could protect her from the world. Raymond Hale watched them through the mirror as he pulled the bus back onto the road. 5 little girls, laughter spilling down the aisle, their voices weaving together. To anyone watching, it was an ordinary morning. The bus rumbled past fields rimmed with frost, past the old church with its leaning steeple, past the general store where the shopkeeper waved half-heartedly. Everything seemed the same, everything seemed safe. But hours later, when the school bell rang, those 5 little girls never walked through the doors. Teachers waited, parents grew anxious. Calls were made. The bus had vanished along its route, as though swallowed by the mist. By noon, panic had spread through the town. Police cars combed the roads, helicopters searched from above. Neighbors gathered in worried clusters. Yet there was nothing, no sound, no trace, no children. By evening, fear thickened into silence. The girls were gone, and so was Raymond Hale. The bus, the driver, and 5 little girls had disappeared into the October cold, leaving only questions and a grief that would never leave the town again. Asterisk the day after the disappearance, the town of Ashwood wore its grief like a heavy shroud. Curtains that usually framed cheery windows were pulled closed, and voices that once carried across porches dropped into whispers. Every street corner was marked by a police cruiser, its flashing lights casting anxious shadows on the faces of neighbors who gathered but dared not linger. It was as though the whole town had stopped breathing, suspended in a moment of waiting that no one wanted to name. For Maggie Monroe, waiting was unbearable. She sat at her kitchen table with a mug of untouched coffee, her fingers clenched around Emma's sketchbook that had been left behind the morning. Her daughter disappeared. Emma never went anywhere without it. Yet here it was. Pages fluttering like wings under the ceiling fan. Maggie stared at the pencil marks. Drawings of trees and houses. Faces of animals and smiling girls who looked eerily like Sarah, Abigail, Ruthie, and even Lily Hart. She ran her hand over the paper, her heart pounding with the awful thought. Had Emma drawn their fate before it happened? Carla Davis burst into the kitchen without knocking. Her eyes were red, her hair disheveled, her body trembling from sleeplessness. "They found the bus," she whispered, her voice cracking. Maggie's breath caught. "Where?" "In the woods, past Miller's Creek." But Carla hesitated, her hands twisting together. It was empty, Maggie. No children, no driver. Just nothing. The two women clutched each other, neither able to form words as the silence between them screamed louder than anything they could. By afternoon, the whole town was at Miller's Creek. The yellow bus sat crooked in the mud, its paint dull under the gray sky. The doors hung open like a mouth caught mid-scream. Inside, the seats were intact. The floor swept clean. To clean. Not a backpack, not a shoe, not even Ruthie's doll. Sheriff Dawson, a broad man with thinning hair and haunted eyes, barked orders to his deputies, but his face betrayed his despair. He knew, as everyone did, that children did not simply vanish. Maggie pressed closer, her eyes scanning every corner. That's when she noticed it, a faint smear on the back window, too high for a child, too deliberate to be a smudge. She leaned in, heart hammering, and saw it was not dirt, but charcoal, rubbed in looping strokes. A drawing, a tree with twisted branches, them in style. Her knees weakened. She stumbled back, clutching the sheriff's arm. "This is my daughter's. She was here." Dawson frowned, but nodded grimly. "We'll test it." "But Maggie," he hesitated, lowering his voice. "We've been told to keep this quiet. Higher authorities are already circling." "Higher authorities?" Maggie repeated. "What do you mean?" But the sheriff turned away, his jaw set, his eyes avoiding hers. That night, as Maggie tried to rest, the sound of tires crunching gravel outside jolted her awake. She peered through the curtains and saw a dark sedan parked beneath the oaks. Two men in suits sat inside, their faces lit only by the glow of a cigarette. They weren't neighbors, and they weren't police. She stood frozen, pulse racing, until the car pulled away without a sound, leaving only the smell of smoke drifting through the night. Maggie called Carla in a panic, but her friend was strangely subdued. "Maggie, maybe we shouldn't dig into this. Maybe it's too dangerous. Too dangerous. Our daughters are gone." Maggie snapped. "Don't you see? Someone's trying to bury the truth." Asterisk in the silence that followed. Maggie realized something had shifted between them. Carla was frightened, maybe even resigned. But Maggie burned with resolve. She couldn't let go, not when the answers were just beyond reach. As dawn broke, she returned to the bus side alone. The woods were still, mist curling around the trees. She climbed inside the bus, her footsteps echoing. The charcoal tree was still etched on the window, but as she looked closer, she noticed something new. Tiny numbers scratched into the seat metal beneath it. 17 for 9. She traced them with her fingers, her stomach twisting. Were they a date, a code, a clue? Before she could think further, a voice startled her. "You shouldn't be here." She spun around to see an old man standing by the door, thin, stooped, his eyes shadowed. "Raymond Hale wasn't what you think," he said quietly. "He wasn't a monster." Maggie froze, her breath catching. "You knew him." The man nodded slowly. "He tried to protect them, but there are things in this town, things you don't want to see." His words hung heavy in the air before he turned and walked back into the mist, vanishing like a ghost. Maggie sat trembling in the hollow bus, her heart torn between dread and determination. For the first time in 17 years, she felt closer to the truth, but the truth was already reaching back for her, its fingers cold and relentless. The third morning after the disappearance carried a strange, unnatural stillness. As though the town itself was holding its breath, Maggie Monroe woke with a start, heart pounding, sweat beading her forehead. The dream still clung to her. Emma, standing beneath a crooked tree, sketchbook in hand, pointing to something Maggie could not see. The sound of her daughter's voice echoed faintly in her ears. "Look where they told you not to." Shaking, Maggie sat at the edge of her bed, clutching Emma's sketchbook that never left her side now. She flipped through the pages, searching for something she might have overlooked, when one drawing caught her eye. It wasn't one of Emma's usual cheerful pictures of animals or friends. This one was darker, thick charcoal lines forming a gnarled oak tree, roots twisting like claws into the earth. At its base, 5 small figures stood hand in hand. Above them, a shadowy outline of a man loomed. Maggie's breath caught. The tree in the picture was the same shape as the one near Miller's Creek, where the bus was found abandoned. Her phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Sheriff Dawson. His voice was weary, guarded. "Maggie, we've had a break. You might want to come down to the station." When she arrived, the sheriff led her into a dim office where a folder lay open on the desk. Inside were photographs taken from Raymond Hale's belongings, discovered in an old locker at the bus depot. Maggie's eyes widened. Among the scraps of paper and worn maps were pages covered in drawings eerily similar to Emma's crooked trees, looping numbers, strange symbols. "What is this?" Maggie whispered, her hands trembling. Dawson rubbed his temples. "We don't know. Looked like he was trying to leave messages, but none of it makes sense. The numbers don't match. Dates, not addresses, just fragments." Maggie studied one page more closely. The numbers 17, 4, 9 were scribbled in bold, circled several times. Her heart skipped. It matched what she found scratched on the bus seat. Her voice shook. He was leaving clues. He wanted someone to find them before Dawson could answer. The door swung open. A tall man in a dark suit stepped in, followed by another carrying a briefcase. Their badges flashed quickly to quickly. "Federal involvement," the taller man said. His tone clipped. "This investigation is being reassigned. All files are to be sealed until further notice." Maggie's pulse quickened. "Sealed? My daughter is missing. You can't just bury this." The man's eyes met hers, cold and unyielding. "Man, for your own safety, stop asking questions. Sometimes answers are more dangerous than ignorance." She wanted to scream, to fight, but Dawson gave her a subtle shake of the head, a silent warning. The men gathered the files and left as quickly as they had come, leaving only the hollow echo of boots in the hall. That night, Maggie could not sleep. She sat by her kitchen window, staring at the darkened street. Around midnight, she noticed it again, the same black sedan idling at the corner, cigarette smoke curling faintly in the glow of the taillights. They were watching her. Fear coiled in her stomach, but beneath it burned a fiercer flame, defiance. Gripping Emma's sketchbook, she whispered, "I won't stop, baby, I promise." The next morning, Maggie drove out to Miller's Creek. The woods loomed thick and silent, mist coiling low between the trunks. She wandered until she found the oak tree from Emma's drawing. Its branches twisted skyward like broken arms. Beneath its roots, the ground looked disturbed, the soil uneven as if dug up and filled again. Kneeling, she brushed aside the dirt. With trembling hands, her fingers scraped something hard. She pulled, heart racing, until a rusted tin box emerged. Inside, wrapped in oil-stained cloth, were small trinkets. A bracelet Maggie recognized as Sarah's, a scrap of fabric that had once been Abigail's hair ribbon, and a doll's button-eye, the missing one from Ruthie's rag doll. Tears blurred her vision, but there was something else in the box. A photograph, faded, yellowed. It showed the 5 girls lined up outside the bus, but in the corner, half-shadowed, was a woman, tall, sharp-featured, standing just beyond the cordon. The same woman Maggie had seen in the old police photo. Her hands shook. Violently, she clutched the photo to her chest, the world spinning around her. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't a stranger. She had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. And then Maggie heard the crunch of leaves behind her. She froze. Someone was in the woods with her. Slowly, she turned, heart in her throat. Through the trees, she caught a glimpse of movement, a dark figure watching. She bolted, clutching the tin box, running blindly back to her car as branches whipped her face. She didn't stop until she was back on the road, gasping for air. The truth was closer now, too close, and Maggie knew someone didn't want her to survive long enough to find it. The air in Ashwood felt heavier in the days that followed, as if the whole town were choking on secrets. Maggie Monroe barely slept, her nights broken by the sound of phantom footsteps on her porch or the low hum of a car engine idling in the street. Before vanishing into the dark, she clutched Emma's sketchbook to her chest as she sat in her dim kitchen. The rusted tin box from the oak tree laid out before her. The trinkets inside seemed harmless enough. To anyone else, Sarah's bracelet, Abigail's ribbon, Ruthie's doll's eye, but to Maggie, they were fragments of the girl's last moments. Relics that proved they had been there, alive, beneath that tree. But the photograph was the thing that haunted her most. 5 girls standing near the bus, and there, in the background, half hidden but unmistakable, a tall, sharp-featured woman. Maggie had scoured the picture again and again, searching for any clue that could explain who she was. Every time she stared into the woman's eyes, caught even in the faded photo, a chill crept down her spine. Whoever she was, she had been there from the beginning. On the 4th night after the discovery, Maggie was startled awake by the sharp crack of glass. Her breath caught as she crept down the hallway, clutching a lamp in trembling hands. In the living room, the window had been shattered. A rock lay on the rug, and tied around it was a note written in jagged letters, "Stop digging or you'll bury yourself." Her knees nearly buckled. She stumbled back, her lamp shaking in her grip. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching, they were warning her. She called Sheriff Dawson immediately, and though he promised to send a deputy, Maggie could hear the hesitation in his voice. He was afraid to. The next day, Dawson met her at the station, his face drawn. He closed the blinds before speaking. "Maggie, I need you to listen. I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. Raymond Hale wasn't the man they made him out to be." Maggie's breath quickened. Then what was he? The sheriff slid an old folder across the desk. Inside were reports never made public, complaints about Hale's behavior, sightings of him talking to strangers in black sedans, entries in his notebook that read like coded warnings. But one entry stood out, written in frantic handwriting. They said, "Take 5. I said no. They'll come for me. If anyone finds this, follow the numbers." Maggie's fingers shook as she traced the words. He was trying to protect them, she whispered. Dawson nodded grimly. Or he was caught in something bigger than he could fight. That night, Maggie drove out to the old bus depot, her headlights cutting through the fog. She slipped inside, the abandoned garage, the air thick with the smell of oil and rust. She searched until she found Hale's locker, rusted shut, but pried open long ago. Inside, beneath scraps of paper and broken tools, she discovered a leather-bound notebook. The pages were filled with frantic sketches, trees, rivers, back roads of Ashwood, and over, a single image, the same tall woman from the photograph. Her face drawn again and again, always looming over the children. Maggie's pulse raced as she flipped to the final page. There, in bold strokes, was the word Lily. Beneath it, not one of them. The room tilted. Maggie stumbled back, gripping the locker for support. Lily, heart bright-eyed, mysterious. The girl whose records didn't exist had been different from the start. If Hale was right, Lily had never been a victim. She had been part of it. Before she could process the revelation, a noise echoed through the garage, footsteps. Slow and deliberate. Maggie's heart hammered. She slipped behind a pillar, clutching the notebook, her breath shallow. The footsteps grew louder, the scrape of boots on concrete. Then a low voice echoed in the dark. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Monroe." Maggie froze, every nerve on fire. The figure stepped into the sliver of light, one of the men in the black sedan, his face hard, his eyes cold. "Go home. Forget what you think you found, or you'll end up like Hale." Asterisk. Maggie's hand tightened around the notebook. She forced her voice to steady, though her insides quaked. "If you think I'm going to stop, you don't know me. I won't stop until I know what happened to Emma." The man's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "Emma isn't the one you should be worried about. It's Lily." The lights flickered, and when Maggie blinked, the man was gone, his footsteps swallowed by the dark. She staggered back into the night, clutching the notebook as though it were a lifeline. Driving home, her mind spun. Hale had been scapegoated. The 5 girls had not been equal victims. Lily Hart was different, perhaps even complicit, and someone powerful was desperate to keep it buried. As she pulled into her driveway, her headlights caught a figure sitting on her porch. Maggie slammed the brakes, her heart leaping into her throat. It was Carla Davis, tears streaking her face. "Maggie," she sobbed, standing in the glow of the headlights. "I remembered something I should have told you 17 years ago." Maggie Monroe left the engine running, headlights blazing against the porch where Carla Davis stood like a ghost dragged out of the past. The autumn wind whipped at Carla's hair, and her face was streaked with tears that caught the light. For a moment, Maggie thought her friend might collapse right there. But when she stepped out of the car, Carla rushed toward her, grabbing her shoulders with trembling hands. I should have told you years ago, Carla gasped, her voice broken. I thought it didn't matter. I thought it was just confusion. Well, it's been haunting me, Maggie. The morning the girls disappeared, Lily said something to Sarah. Maggie's blood ran cold. What did she say? Carla's eyes darted round, as if the dark itself were listening. She leaned close and whispered, "Don't worry. We're going somewhere better." The words slammed into Maggie like a blow. She staggered back, clutching the notebook she had taken from Hale's locker. The last page, Lily. Not one of them burned in her mind. You're telling me she knew. Carla, why didn't you ever say this? I thought Sarah had made it up. Kids say strange things, and after they were gone, I was too broken. I told myself it was nothing. But Maggie, what if Lily was never meant to vanish? What if she was the reason? The two women stood in silence, the weight of that possibility pressing down on them. Then Maggie glanced toward the corner of her yard. The black sedan was there. Again, its engine silent, the shapes just visible inside. Watching, always watching, inside. Maggie whispered, pulling Carla with her. They locked the door, though it felt like paper against the storm outside. Maggie spread Hale's notebook across the table, pointing at the frantic sketches. He knew. He was trying to fight them. Look, trees, back roads, numbers. It's a map, Carla. He was leaving a trail. Carla leaned over the pages, her tears dripping onto the ink. Then we follow it. If no one else will, we do it ourselves. The decision bound them together like steel. The next day, before dawn, the two women drove out of town in Maggie's old car, following the crooked lines and numbers Hale had drawn. The road narrowed into gravel, the trees crowding closer, their branches arching overhead like a tunnel. The woods grew denser, the air colder, until finally the car could go no further. They climbed out, clutching flashlights and the notebook, and pressed deeper into the forest. Hours passed. Just when despair began to creep in, Maggie spotted something carved into the bark of a tree, the same looping numbers, 17, 4, 9. Her pulse quickened. They were on the right path. Then came the smell, faint but unmistakable. Smoke. They crept forward, and through the trees, they saw a cabin, half collapsed, hidden in the shadows of the forest. Its roof sagged, and the windows were boarded, but smoke curled from a chimney. Someone was there. Carla gripped Maggie's arm. We should call Dawson. They'd only seal it up again, Maggie whispered. We going. The cabin door creaked as they pushed it open. Inside, the air reeked of damp wood and ash. Piles of old papers and photographs littered the floor. On the walls, children's drawings were tacked in uneven rows, drawings in different hands, but all showing the same thing, a tall woman, faceless, looming over 5 small figures. Carla's sob caught in her throat. Sarah drew this. I'd know her lines anywhere. Maggie's heart thundered. Emma's sketches had been here too. The cabin was no stranger's hideout. It was a place where the girls had once been kept. Proof they had survived beyond that first terrible morning. Then a floorboard creaked above them. The women froze. Slowly, they raised their eyes toward the loft. A shadow moved, followed by the soft scrape of boots, and then a voice, low and tired, drifted down. You shouldn't have come. Maggie's breath caught. She knew that voice. Every parent in Ashwood knew it. Raymond Hale. Carla's knees gave way, and Maggie pulled her upright, her mind spinning. Hale was supposed to be dead, gone, buried in whispers and blame. Yet here he was, alive, staring down at them with hollow eyes. What did you do with them? Maggie demanded, her voice shaking with rage. Where are the girls? Hale stepped into the light, his face gaunt, his beard ragged. I tried to save them. God help me. I tried, but I couldn't stop her. I couldn't stop Lily. The name rang through the cabin like a curse. Hale's voice broke, his eyes wet with torment. She wasn't their victim. She was their key. Before Maggie could speak, headlights flared through the trees, cutting into the cabin. The roar of engines followed, several vehicles pulling up fast. Men's voices shouted orders outside, boots crunching over leaves. Hale's face twisted with terror. They found me. You need to run. Now. Maggie and Carla exchanged a desperate glance. Outside, the heavy thud of doors slamming shut echoed through the forest. Whoever had been watching from the black sedan wasn't alone anymore. They had come with reinforcements. The walls seemed to close in. Maggie clutched the notebook. Carla clung to her hand, and above them, Hale whispered like a man already condemned. It's not the girls they want to hide. It's the truth about Lily, and if you don't escape now, you'll never live to tell it. The door burst open, and the nightmare truly began. The cabin erupted in chaos the moment the door splintered off. Its hinges, harsh beams of flashlights, cut across the dusty room. The shouts of men in black coats filling the air. Maggie's instinct screamed at her to run, but her body froze. Clutching Emma's sketchbook against her chest as though it were armor, Carla was beside her, pale and trembling, unable to breathe. Raymond Hale moved first, with surprising strength for a man who looked so broken. He shoved an old wardrobe against the window and hissed at the women. "Back door, go, now. Don't argue. They'll kill you if you stay." His voice wasn't a plea, it was a command, born of years of running. Maggie grabbed Carla's arm and pulled her through the narrow hallway as boots thundered behind them. She could hear the men fanning out, their radios crackling with coded orders. Every instinct told her this wasn't just about finding Hale. They had come for her too. For the truth she was carrying. They burst through the back door and into the freezing night, stumbling over roots and fallen branches. The forest seemed endless. Swallowing the weak light of the moon, Maggie's lungs burned, but she didn't stop. Carla stumbled, nearly falling, but Maggie dragged her onward. Behind them, shouts grew louder. Dogs barked. They were being hunted after what felt like hours, but could only have been minutes. Hale caught up, his breath ragged. He pointed toward a ravine ahead. "There's a culvert-old railway. Hide there until dawn." They scrambled down the slope, mud clinging to their hands, rocks tearing at their knees. The culvert yawned like a tunnel into the earth, damp and reeking of rust, but it was shelter. They collapsed inside, gasping, their bodies trembling. Outside, the searchlight swept past, voices echoing. Maggie turned to Hale, her fury breaking. Through her fear, "You tell me right now what happened to my Emma. What happened to Sarah, Abigail, Ruthie, and what is Lily?" Hale's face was haunted, his eyes hollow from years of guilt. They were taken because of her. Lily wasn't lost, she was delivered, a promise kept to someone powerful. The others were collateral. 5 looked less suspicious than 1. His hands shook as he rubbed at his face. "I tried to run with them. God help me. I tried. But she wasn't afraid like the others. She watched me, smiled at me, like she knew I couldn't save them." Carla shook her head violently. "No, she was just a child." Hale's voice broke. "She was never just a child." The culvert fell, silent except for the drip of water. Maggie felt her stomach twist. Every thread led back to Lily, the girl no one remembered, the name erased from reports, the child with no history. Suddenly, a beam of light pierced the tunnel. Maggie's heart seized. They had been found. Hale leapt to his feet, pulling a rusted revolver from his coat. "Run," he barked. "Go deeper, find the old tracks. I'll buy you time." Maggie didn't want to leave him, but Carla dragged her, and they plunged deeper into the darkness. Gunshots cracked behind them, echoing like thunder. Hale's shouts rose, then were cut short. They ran until their legs gave out, collapsing where the tunnel opened into a forgotten rail yard. The skeletal remains of trains rusting in the weeds. Maggie's chest heaved, tears streaking her face. She didn't know if Hale was alive or dead. All she knew was that he had given them one last chance. In the distance, a soft glow flickered. A small shack stood near the tracks, its door slightly ajar. Against every instinct, Maggie crawled toward it. Inside, the smell of old wood and mildew stung her nose. On the table lay a stack of dusty files, photographs and reels of tape. She flipped one open and froze. It was a dossier, names, ages, pictures of children, all girls, some marked with red X, others labeled recovered. And there, on the top page, was a photo of Lily Hart, not 9 years old, not smiling on the bus, but older, 15, then 17. The images chronicled her, growing up, always in the company of that same sharp-featured woman. Carla clutched her mouth, stifling a scream. Maggie felt the world tilt. She lived, she whispered, her voice shaking. She wasn't taken, she was raised. The deeper they looked, the worse it became. Reports of children disappearing from nearby towns, each case buried or erased. Always the same pattern, always connected to a woman known only by one name scrawled across the files, Marrow. The final folder made Maggie's hands go cold. Inside was a letter written in Raymond Hale's handwriting. "If anyone finds this, know the truth. The girls were never meant to be saved. Only one was chosen. Lily was the key. The rest were shadows to hide her light." Before Maggie could speak, the shack door creaked. She and Carla froze. In the doorway stood a figure silhouetted against the pale dawn. A girl, now a young woman, with piercing dark eyes that seemed far too old for her years. "Hello, Mrs. Monroe," she said softly, her lips curving into a strange smile. "You've been looking for me." It was Lily Hart, alive, changed, and nothing about her felt like a victim. Asterisk, the sight of Lily Hart standing in the doorway froze Maggie where she sat. The pale dawn framed her like an apparition, but she was no ghost flesh and blood. Her presence radiating a strange, quiet power that made Maggie's skin crawl. She was older now, 17 years older, her face sharper, her eyes darker, yet there was no hesitation in her stance, no fear in her gaze. She stepped inside as though she owned the place, her shadow stretching across the piles of forgotten files and photographs. Carla let out a trembling whisper. It's not possible." "Oh, it's possible," Lily replied calmly, her voice carrying an unsettling maturity. "I was never lost. I was found." She glanced at the open dossiers on the table, the photographs of missing girls, the reports of silence and cover-ups. Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but it was cold, hollow. "I see you've discovered Merrow's work." Maggie's throat tightened. "Work? You call this work? They were children. My Emma, Carla Sarah, what did you do to them?" For the first time, Lily's expression softened, almost with pity. She walked slowly, fingers grazing the dusty files as if they were relics in a museum. "I didn't take them, Mrs. Monroe. They were taken because of me." 5 girls on a bus looked like victims of chance. One girl alone would have raised too many questions. The others were camouflage. Carla choked back a sob. "You mean they died because of you?" Lily's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Because of Merrow. She was my mother, my guardian, my teacher. She said I was meant for something greater, that the others were necessary sacrifices to keep me hidden. I didn't understand then. I understand now." The room swayed around. Maggie, her knees threatened to give way, but rage rooted her in place. "Where are they? Lily, were they killed? Buried in these woods? Tell me what happened to Emma." Lily tilted her head, her dark hair falling across her face. For the first time, her calm forehead cracked, and a shadow passed through her eyes. "Emma, she was strong, stronger than the others. She fought them. She fought me." Her voice broke into a whisper, and because of that, she suffered. Carla screamed and lunged forward, but Maggie held her back. The air between them felt poisoned, heavy with 17 years of grief and fury. Maggie's mind spun with Hale's words. She wasn't one of them. She was the key. Now the truth stood before her in the flesh, but Lily wasn't finished. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth. With careful hands, she placed it on the table. Maggie's breath caught when she saw what it was. Emma's sketchbook. The one Emma had carried everywhere. The one she had sworn was her daughter's last tether to innocence. "How do you have this?" Maggie demanded, her voice breaking. Lily's voice softened again, almost tender. "She gave it to me the night they tried to run. She pressed it into my hands and said, 'If I don't make it, you remember me, you draw the truth.'" The world collapsed around Maggie. Her chest heaved, her vision blurred, but she refused to let tears blind her. She staggered toward Lily, gripping the sketchbook with trembling hands. "You watched her die," she whispered. "You let them take her." Lily's composure faltered, her eyes glistening for the first time. "I didn't let them. I was too afraid to stop them. I was chosen. They told me I was special, and I believed them. I was a child, Maggie, and I've been living with that choice every day since." The silence that followed was unbearable, broken only by Carla's sobs and the distant sound of engines in the forest. They were not alone. Merrow's men were closing in again. Lily straightened, her face hardening. "You can hate me all you want, but if you want the world to know the truth, you need me alive. They'll erase me if they find me here, just like they erased your daughters." Maggie's heart warred with itself. Every part of her wanted to tear Lily apart, to scream until the world broke. But another part, the part that had lived with 17 years of silence, saw the terrible truth in her words. Lily was the only living link to what had happened. Without her, the story would vanish again. Outside, shouts grew closer. Flashlights flickered through the cracks in the boards. Lily stepped back toward the door, her eyes fixed on Maggie. "Decide now. Save me, and you'll save their memory. Leave me, and they'll bury it all again." Maggie's grip tightened on the sketchbook. Rage, grief, and resolve collided inside her. She turned to Carla, who was shaking her head violently, unwilling to forgive, unwilling to trust. But Maggie knew this was bigger than forgiveness. This was about truth. She nodded once, her jaw set. We run, all of us, and when we get out, the world is going to know. The three women burst from the shack into the pale light of dawn, the forest erupting, with shouts and gunfire. Maggie clutched Emma's sketchbook like a shield. Carla clung to her side, and Lily led them through the trees with the certainty of someone who had spent her life navigating darkness. Bullets tore through the branches, men shouted orders, but Maggie felt something she hadn't felt in 17 years, not peace, not closure, but purpose. For the first time since Emma vanished, she was no longer standing still in grief. She was moving forward, carrying her daughter's truth. They stumbled into the open field where the rusting railway tracks stretched like veins into the horizon. Behind them, the forest roared with pursuit. Ahead, the first light of sunrise broke. Across the sky, Maggie turned once, just once, to the woods that had swallowed her daughter 17 years ago. I'm coming, Emma, she whispered. They'll never hide you again. And then she ran, faster than she had ever run in her life, into the light of morning toward the reckoning that awaited them all.